You ever see someone who's always smiling, always okay, always checking in on everyone else while somehow never needing anything? That was you. You learned early that people like strength, or at least the illusion of it. You were praised for being mature, calm under pressure, the one who held it together when everything around you was falling apart. You got good at hiding, not because you wanted to lie, but because somewhere along the way, you realized your truth made other people uncomfortable. So you crafted the perfect mask, the dependable one, the strong one, the one who could take the pain and turn it into productivity, the one who didn't flinch when life hit hard, the one who answered, "I'm fine," like it was a programmed reflex. But here's the problem with always being strong. No one ever checks if you're dying inside. You became a refuge for others. They came to you crying, confused, spiraling. You'd listen, validate, hold space. You gave and gave, thinking maybe one day someone would see the cracks forming in your own walls and say, "Hey, what about you? Are you okay?" But they never did, because you never let them. You told the world you were invincible, and the world believed you. There was one night, you remember it like it was yesterday, when everything just got too quiet. No one was calling. No one was texting. Not because they didn't care, but because they thought you were fine. You always were. You sat on your bed with that numbness, that foggy kind of ache that doesn't even hurt anymore. It just lingers. You looked at your phone, scrolled through the names, and realized you didn't know who to call. Not because no one was there, but because you didn't know how to say, "I'm not strong today." You'd built a reputation that trapped you. That's the dark side of being the strong one. It becomes a prison. You wear the mask so long that you forget what your real face even looks like. There's this myth we've been fed, that being strong means being silent, that being resilient means swallowing pain, hiding weakness, pushing through no matter what. But that's not strength. That's survival. And survival, when prolonged, becomes suffering. You might have had a childhood that forced you to grow up too fast. Maybe you were the peacekeeper in a chaotic home. Maybe someone told you, directly or indirectly, that emotions are weakness, that crying is shameful, that vulnerability is dangerous. So you stopped feeling. You turned emotions into tasks, grief into goals, sadness into silence. You told yourself, if I can just get through today, maybe tomorrow will be better. And days turned into years. People started admiring you. You're so strong. I don't know how you do it. You're always so composed. They meant well, but each compliment was another brick in the wall. You were screaming inside and they were applauding you for how quiet you were. Then came the moment, that one moment that shattered everything. Maybe it was a health scare, a betrayal, a breakup, a lost job, a panic attack out of nowhere. Or maybe it was nothing dramatic. Just the slow unraveling of a soul that had carried too much for too long. You stood in front of the mirror, eyes hollow, and whispered something you hadn't allowed yourself to say in years. "I'm tired." Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones, the kind of tired that makes existing feel like a chore. You weren't suicidal, you weren't broken, you were exhausted from pretending. Here's the thing no one tells you. Pretending to be strong is way more exhausting than just being honest about your pain. But we lie. Over and over. We smile when we want to scream. We laugh when we want to cry. We say it's all good when nothing is, because we think people will leave if they see us weak. But maybe what we should be asking is this: if someone only loves you when you're strong, do they really love you at all? You didn't start faking strength to deceive anyone. You did it because you had to. Because no one taught you that softness is sacred, that it's okay to crumble, that healing starts the moment you stop pretending. This part of your story, it's not the breakdown, it's the beginning. Because for the first time, you're about to learn what real strength actually looks like. And here's the first truth of it. You don't have to be strong all the time. You just have to be real. It didn't start with a scream. It didn't come in a dramatic explosion of emotion. It started with silence. You were driving, just you, the wheel, and that quiet hum of the engine that somehow made the emptiness louder. The road blurred under tired eyes. You weren't heading anywhere important, just away, from everything, from nothing. The sky was gray, like it was trying to cry for you. And then, the tears came, not loud, not chaotic, just a slow, painful leak, like your soul was deflating. You pulled over, turned off the engine, put your forehead against the wheel and just let it happen. No soundtrack, no audience, no hero moment, just you. You had finally broken the spell. After years of pretending, surviving, deflecting, minimizing, you said it. I'm not okay. And it echoed inside you like thunder in an empty canyon. Saying those 3 words didn't feel weak. It felt human. Like breathing after being underwater too long. Like tasting food after starving yourself of emotion. You weren't falling apart. You were finally letting yourself be seen, even if only by yourself. But here's what they don't tell you about finally collapsing. It's terrifying, because once you stop pretending, you can't go back to the mask. Once you whisper, I'm not okay, you realize just how long you've been lying to yourself, and how deeply that lie ran. You went home that night and laid on the floor. No distractions, no phone, no music. Just the hum of the ceiling fan and the weight of your own body finally surrendering. You thought about all the times you smiled when you were breaking, all the I'm good texts, all the jokes you made to deflect concern, all the times people told you, you're so strong, and you said thank you, when what you really wanted was to scream, no, I'm just really good at disappearing inside myself. But here's the truth no one teaches. 1. Healing starts the moment you stop performing. Not when you start meditating, not when you read self-help books, not when you hit rock bottom. The real beginning is that first honest moment, the one where you let the truth sit on your tongue without spitting it back out. I'm not okay. It's such a simple sentence, but it changes everything. You told one person, that one person you always felt safe around, maybe a friend, a sibling, a therapist, or maybe just your reflection in the mirror. And their response, it wasn't what you expected. They didn't fix it. They didn't rush to reassure you. They didn't quote inspirational nonsense or try to cheer you up. They stayed. They listened. They said, it's okay not to be okay. And something inside you cracked open even more. Because for the first time, you weren't alone with the weight. You didn't have to carry the silence by yourself. You didn't have to be the strong one in that moment. You just had to be honest. But the days that followed, they weren't easy. You woke up feeling raw, like your skin had been peeled back and every emotion was suddenly too loud. Vulnerability doesn't just open you up to healing, it also exposes the pain you've buried. You found yourself crying more than usual. Not out of sadness, but release. Like every tear was something old being washed away. An unspoken heartbreak, a forgotten disappointment, a silent wound you'd ignored for years. And the people around you, they didn't all understand. Some looked uncomfortable. Some changed the subject. Some offered empty positivity like it was a band-aid for a bullet wound. Some distanced themselves, and that hurt. But it also revealed something you needed to know. Not everyone deserves access to your healing. Some people only know how to love you when you're useful, when you're stable, when you're fine. They never learned how to hold space for your truth, only your image. So when you stopped being the version of yourself that made their life easier, they disappeared. Let them. This moment, this unraveling, was not weakness. It was your becoming. You were finally learning that being human isn't about being perfect or productive or permanently composed. It's about feeling. And for the first time in a long time, you felt everything. The sadness, the shame, the regret, the grief, the relief. Because once the mask came off, you realized it was never protecting you. It was suffocating you. And here's the part most people miss. Vulnerability isn't a pit you fall into, it's a bridge you walk across, shaky at first, terrifying, but leading to something far better than pretending ever could. You were starting to feel lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because you finally stopped carrying it alone. You realized that saying, "I'm not okay," doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're brave enough to face the truth. And that's what real strength is. Not hiding your cracks, but letting the light in through them. There's a moment in every healing journey that no one prepares you for. The moment you stop being the strong one and people start disappearing. You'd think vulnerability would bring people closer, that finally showing your truth would deepen relationships, that asking for help would make others step up. But sometimes it does the opposite. Sometimes people don't want you. They want the version of you that made their life easier. It starts slow. A few unanswered texts, a little less warmth in the voice, fewer check-ins, less eye contact. The conversations get shorter, the invitations stop coming. You wonder if you did something wrong. You didn't. You just stopped playing the role. You stopped being the emotional sponge, the fixer, the always available therapist in a friend costume. You stopped saying, "I'm fine," and started saying, "I'm overwhelmed." You stopped swallowing pain and started expressing it. And for some people, that's too much, because your pain made them uncomfortable. That's the hardest truth of healing. Sometimes the first thing you lose is the people who loved your mask more than your face. At first, you blamed yourself. Maybe you were too dramatic, too emotional, too needy. Maybe you should have stayed quiet. Maybe you shouldn't have made it awkward. Maybe vulnerability is a mistake. But then you remember all the times you showed up for them, all the times you were exhausted but still made time, all the times you dropped everything just to pick up their pieces, all the times you held space, even when you had none left for yourself. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking for basic humanity. There's a kind of grief that comes with growth. It's not loud or obvious. It's the quiet ache of outgrowing relationships that were never built on truth, only performance. Because once you stop performing, the illusion breaks, and the audience leaves. But you don't need an audience. You need people who can sit with your silence, people who can hold your truth, not just your talent, people who love the real you, not the convenient, edited version. This is where the loneliness creeps in. After the performance ends, but before the new connections begin, you look around and wonder who's left, and the answer might shock you: almost no one. But that's not a failure, that's a clearing, a sacred reset, because now you're no longer surrounded by people who only value your strength. Now there's space for people who understand that true connection isn't built on utility, but on mutual presence. You spend a few weeks in that liminal space, healing, grieving, reflecting, sometimes raging, but something shifts inside you, something small but seismic. You stop apologizing for being real. You stop dimming your needs. You stop editing your emotions just to be palatable. And for the first time, you start building boundaries, not walls, boundaries. Because you're done being the unpaid therapist, the constant caretaker, the one who absorbs other people's chaos while silently drowning in your own. Someone new enters your life, not romantically, maybe not even dramatically, but gently. A friend, a coworker, maybe a stranger online, and they do something so rare, so healing that it almost feels alien. They listen, really listen, not to fix, not to respond, just to be with you in your mess. And in that moment, you realize something powerful. You were never too much. You were just surrounded by people not equipped to handle depth. Here's the controversial truth most people won't admit. A lot of relationships are built on control, not love, not connection, not respect, control. As long as you stay predictable, useful, agreeable, emotionally contained, everything's fine. But the moment you break the script, they call you difficult, selfish, overwhelming, dramatic, because you disrupted the illusion. You dared to be whole and not just helpful, and that scares people who benefit from your silence. Let them leave. Let the uncomfortable ones go. Let the audience walk out mid-performance. Because you are not here to perform, you are here to be. And the people who can love you in your softness, your silence, your mess, they'll stay. Or they'll arrive. Or you'll meet them when you least expect it. But first, you must be brave enough to face the loneliness of not being needed and discover the peace of finally being known. There was one person you thought would never leave. Maybe it was a best friend, a partner, a sibling, someone you had carried through storms, talked off cliffs, held in their darkest hours, and when your turn came, they vanished. They couldn't handle the version of you that wasn't constantly giving, the version that needed instead of served. That moment hurts more than most heartbreaks, because it's not just about losing someone. It's about realizing you were never really seen. You were just useful. Let's call it what it is, emotional convenience. They liked you when you were stable, when you were the strong one, when you asked nothing, expected little, and made everything feel manageable. But once you needed care, support, presence, once you needed reciprocity, the dynamic shifted, and they weren't ready for that. They weren't there for you. They were there for what you gave them. There's a moment that comes after the loss, after the silence, after the people have left and the dust has settled. You wake up one day, and you feel something strange. Peace. Not the kind that's loud and victorious, not the Instagram quote kind. A quieter peace. The kind that hums beneath the skin. The kind that whispers, you survived. And even more than that, you stayed soft. Because here's the real miracle. You didn't let it turn you bitter. You didn't let the silence harden you. You didn't let the betrayals make you cold. You didn't become like the ones who left. You stayed kind. And that is not weakness. That is war. It is war to remain soft in a world that profits from your numbness. It is war to keep loving when you have every reason to shut down. It is war to cry and still care. To fall apart and still get back up. Not as the old version of you, but as someone more honest. There was a time you would have shut down, built walls, played tough, adopted the don't need anybody armor we all reach for when we're bleeding. But this time, you didn't. You let yourself feel. And in feeling, you learned. You started saying no without guilt. Started choosing rest without shame. Started telling the truth even when your voice shook. And little by little the world began to shift. Not because it changed, but because you did. You stopped needing to be understood by everyone. You stopped chasing approval. You stopped forcing yourself to be strong in the ways the world defines it. Loud, hard, unaffected. Because now you knew the truth. Real strength is quiet. Real strength is soft. Real strength has scars. One night, you met someone else who was hurting. They didn't tell you with words. They didn't have to. You saw it in their eyes. That flicker of pain they didn't know how to hide. That cracked smile. That familiar silence. You didn't try to fix them. You didn't give advice. You just sat with them. You made space. You saw them. And in doing so, you realized something profound. All the pain you went through, all of it, gave you the capacity to hold someone else without fear. Your softness became medicine. Your story became shelter, not because you had the answers, but because you had the empathy. They say trauma makes you hard, but maybe that's only true if you don't let yourself heal. Because when you do, you realize that softness isn't what gets you hurt. Denial is. Pretending you don't feel, that you don't need, that you don't care. That's what breaks us. But feeling is how we come home. You started doing little things differently. You spoke slower, breathed deeper, looked people in the eye again. You forgave people, not because they deserved it, but because you deserved peace. You walked away from conversations that drained you. You stopped apologizing for your boundaries. You stopped explaining your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You finally realized you don't owe anyone your suffering. It's easy to become cynical, easy to turn cold, easy to say screw it and shut down. That's what the world tells you to do. Be harder, be tougher, be unreachable, but that's not healing, that's hiding. The real courage is choosing to stay open, to love again after betrayal, to trust again after abandonment, to laugh again after depression, to hope again after heartbreak. That's heroic, that's strength, and it doesn't get enough credit. There's a lie we've been sold, especially in this culture, that emotions make you weak, that softness is feminine and femininity is inferior, that crying is childish, that boundaries are selfish, that being gentle is naive. But look around. Look at what numbness has created: broken relationships, empty success, quiet desperation behind perfect selfies. This isn't strength. This is disconnection. And you chose something else. You chose truth even when it cost you your old identity, even when it cost you people who couldn't meet you there. So now when someone says you've changed, you don't flinch. Because yes, you have changed. You stopped being the over-functioning version of yourself. You stopped being a one-person rescue team. You stopped shrinking for the comfort of others. And in that shift, you found power. The power to stay soft, to cry without shame, to need without guilt, to show up for yourself the way no one ever showed up for you. And maybe, just maybe, to start teaching others how to do the same. Here it is, the part that might sting, the part that might make some people uncomfortable, the part that will either set you free or piss you off first, because you know deep down, it's true. Most people don't actually want you to heal. They want you to function. They want you to stay strong, not for you, but for them. Because when you're strong, they don't have to change. They don't have to show up differently. They don't have to examine how they've been taking, leaning, depending, draining. They don't have to look at the systems that broke you, family, culture, religion, patriarchy, capitalism, and ask hard questions. They just get to say, look how strong you are, while continuing to do nothing. You being strong serves their comfort. Your silence helps them sleep. Your emotional labor keeps their world spinning. Your constant reliability makes them feel safe, while you're slowly unraveling behind the scenes. So when you say, I'm not okay, you break their illusion. And that makes you the problem. Not the pain, not the pressure, you. That's the world's dirtiest lie, that your weakness is the issue instead of their inability to handle truth. It happens in families all the time. You grow up playing peacemaker, caretaker, golden child. You hold your pain in your body like a vault. You make yourself smaller, quieter, more manageable. And the moment you stop, the moment you say, this dynamic isn't healthy, or I need space, or that hurt me, you become the enemy. Not because you're wrong, but because your healing disrupts their comfort. The same thing happens in relationships. You're the rock, the stable one. The one who always comes through, always holds it together, always knows what to say. Until you don't. Until you collapse, cry, feel lost. Suddenly you're too much. Suddenly they're confused. Suddenly they need space. Because they weren't in love with you, they were in love with the version of you that carried them. And now that you're asking to be held, they vanish. Even in society, look at the way we reward burnout. We applaud people for pushing through, for not needing rest, for burying grief, skipping healing, and going straight back to work. Look how strong they are, we say. But strength, in this context, is just another word for self-abandonment. We don't praise emotional health. We don't praise boundary setting. We don't praise softness, openness, truth. We praise endurance, even if it's killing us. And you finally saw through the lie. You realized that being strong all the time was never about you. It was a role you were cast into, a cage dressed up as a compliment. Because if you were always the strong one, they never had to ask how you were doing, never had to deal with your truth, never had to meet you where it was hard. So when you stopped performing, they stopped clapping. Here's what no one wants to admit. Sometimes your healing makes people uncomfortable. Because your healing requires their accountability. And accountability is painful for people who are used to being centered. So they twist it. They say you're being difficult. They say you've changed. They say you're too sensitive now. They say you're dramatic. But what they really mean is, you're no longer bending over backwards to make me comfortable. And that's not your problem. That's theirs. So now what? Now that the mask is off, now that you've walked away from the performance, what does life look like? It looks real. It looks like setting boundaries and losing people, and realizing that the loss is actually protection. It looks like being honest about your needs, even if they call you selfish. It looks like resting, not as a reward, but as a right. It looks like crying, in public, in private, without shame. It looks like saying, I don't know, and I need help, and I'm not okay, and letting those words stand without apology. It looks like choosing softness every single day, not because the world is safe, but because you are finally brave enough to live with your heart open. And here's the final raw truth. You don't have to be strong all the time. You never did. That was the lie they sold you. To keep you quiet, to keep you manageable, to keep you useful. But you are not here to be useful. You are here to be whole. You are allowed to need, to grieve, to collapse, to ask for more, to disappoint the people who only liked you when you were giving, to let it be messy and honest and real. You are allowed to live your life fully, not just function through it. So if this resonated with you, if something in your chest cracked open a little while reading this, leave a comment below. Tell your story. Tell me what being the strong one has cost you. Tell me what healing really looks like in your life. I'll be reading, I'll be replying. You're not alone in this anymore, because the strongest thing you can do right now is say, I'm done performing. And I'll be right here standing with you. Software real, free.